Good evening, and welcome to the Candidate Forum for Pennsylvania Supreme Court Judicial Elections. I am Deborah Gross, CEO of Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts. I first want to thank the Philadelphia Free Library for hosting this event, and to thank the League of Women Voters, the Pennsylvania Bar Association, the Philadelphia Bar Association, the Allegheny County Bar Association for co-sponsoring this program with us. We have over 400 people registered for this event, so this is wonderful. PMC is a nonprofit dedicated to assuring a Pennsylvania judicial system which provides impartiality, fairness, accessibility, and respect. We have advocated for judicial reforms that promote the rule of law, access to justice, and a diverse, qualified, and independent judiciary. A few rules before we begin. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A, and we hope to have some time at the end to answer them. Please know that many questions have already been sent in to us by registrants, so thank you very much. Additionally, under the Pennsylvania Code of Judicial Conduct, judicial candidates cannot make pledges, promises, or commitments on specific issues or on cases that could appear in front of them. That's to protect the impartiality of judges and to provide us confidence that the judges will make decisions based on the facts and the law before them. Judicial candidates may get endorsements from interest groups such as unions and gun rights organizations, but they cannot say how they would rule if a gun law or an employment case were brought before them. Candidates also cannot directly ask for campaign contributions, but they have campaign committees, and their committees are the sources through which their funds are raised. Sorry. I would like to now introduce and thank David Senoff, a founding member of First Law Strategy Group, LLC, for agreeing to be our moderator tonight. David has focused his career on class action lawsuits in important public policy fights for the public and plaintiffs. He has represented clients in federal and state courts across the country at both the trial and appellate levels. He was one of the lead attorneys involved in seeking justice for the victims of the Kids for Cash cases, where a few judges sent juveniles to detention centers in exchange for payoffs, and a few judges were subsequently sent to jail for accepting millions of dollars in bribes. David was recently appointed by the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania to serve on Pennsylvania's disciplinary board, which is dedicated to protecting the public, maintaining the integrity of the legal profession, and safeguarding the reputation of the courts. Thank you, and I'm passing it off to David.
Thanks, Debbie. As Debbie said, I'm David Senoff. I'm glad to be here, and because we have limited time, I'm going to jump right in with the first question, which is a question to everybody, for which there will be 2 minutes for each of you to answer. A lot of people refer to this as, a lot of candidates refer to this as the question. He got or she got the question, and what did they answer? So the question is, everybody here, all the judges who are running for the Supreme Court are currently sitting judges on different courts in the state. And the question is, why do you want to leave the court on which you are currently a judge and become a Supreme Court justice? And we can, I guess we'll start, Judge McLaughlin, you are front and center in my screen wearing green, and it's St. Patrick's Day, so we'll start with you.
Okay, so why I want to leave my court and go to the Supreme Court is to make even more of an impact. I think over the course of my career, everything that I've done has been in steps, you know, from being a prosecutor and a litigator to being a trial judge and an appellate judge. And so this is just now the next step. And it seems natural to me. It's not that I have a desire to leave the Superior Court for any kind of a negative reason, but I think it's positive, to make a positive impact, to bring my own perspective, a unique perspective to our Supreme Court.
Thank you. Judge Patrick?
Yes, hi. I'm currently on the Common Pleas Court bench, and I would like to go to our Pennsylvania Supreme Court because based upon my diverse background and experience, when I say diverse, I simply mean that I've had an extensive career as it relates to, number one, being a trial lawyer, and of course, being a trial judge. This is my 18th year on the Common Pleas Court bench, where I've served in every major trial division, where I've adjudicated more than 20,000 cases in my career, and I've written more than 600 opinions to our 3 appellate courts. So I want to get to that court because I believe that's necessary for someone to get there to not only just have an impact, but to be able to make a change. I believe in upholding and defending our constitutions and our rule of law. And I think that that is missing right now from our court. And I'm excited to be able to run for the court and perhaps to even win the election. I think it's important that our court reflects our society. And we need change on that court. And I'm certainly the candidate that is able to bring the level of change that is needed. And so I'm seeking to get there to make a difference, to make a change, and also to implement some things that I believe would help the citizens of the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you. Judge Brobson?
Well, it's a nice question to ask, David. First, I want to thank the League of Women Voters and the Philadelphia Free Library and the bar associations and Pennsylvania's for Modern Court for making this forum available to the voters, because I do think it's important that the voters get to know the candidates. Actually, as the president judge of the Commonwealth Court, I'm not running away from it. I think it's probably one of the greatest courts in the country, just so unique in the fact that here we have an intermediate appellate court right below the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, whose sole responsibility is to make sure government at all levels follows the law. But we haven't had a Commonwealth Court judge on the Supreme Court in 15 years since Justice Sandra Schultz Newman resigned. And Justice Newman was even only on the Commonwealth Court for a couple of years. I'm in my 12th year on the Commonwealth Court. I was elected in 2009, retained in 2019. And just in December, my colleagues, Democrats and Republicans alike, elected me the 10th president judge of that court to lead it. But over the last 10 years, what I've seen is some of the most consequential decisions that have come out of the Supreme Court have related to matters that emanate from the Commonwealth Court's jurisdiction. And I think bringing that experience as a 14-year litigator dealing with clients who had to deal with government and government compliance, as well as my 11 and my 12th year on the Commonwealth Court ensuring government follows the law, I think that's a new voice that can make a difference on the Supreme Court with that background and that experience that the court just does not have right now. So that's why I'm making myself available to the voters and hoping to secure their vote to win this seat on the Supreme Court.
Thank you. And Judge McCullough?
Thank you so much, David, and everyone who sponsored this. I also am on my 12th year of the Commonwealth Court. This is my second 10-year term. I served as a trial judge before that in the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas, was in private practice, chaired the Board of Property Appeals in our county, and currently chair the Appellate Court Procedural Rules Committee. I also clerked for a judge. I worked in the DA's office. I ran a faith-based charity agency. I think I bring a different perspective to the court. I believe in restorative and equal justice, and I've worked with many, many programs to improve the system of justice. And I find that it's most advantageous to be working at it from the very top down, although you can be very influential at this level. But I have also handled cases that have gone into the Supreme Court, high-profile cases that have impacted our nation, our elections, our taxes, our property rights, right to know law, and I think that it would be beneficial for the Supreme Court to have a judge from the Commonwealth Court. The Supreme Court is the most significant Supreme Court in the nation. It was the first one. And it's established much of the precedent in interpreting the Constitution of the United States and of Pennsylvania. I've been very, very grateful to serve as a public servant on the court. When I ran in 2009, I did not take money from attorneys or PACs because I wanted the people to know they would never have to wonder if I was compromised. And I'm doing the same thing now. It would be a privilege to serve on this highest court and affect the decisions that will guide the Keystone State, a pivotal state for our nation's future. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge McCullough. The second question, Judge Brobson, we'll start with you. Following up on that first question, and we'll have, I guess, 2 minutes for each person to answer. What, in your opinion, is the impact of the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania on Pennsylvanians and their everyday lives? How does the court impact a citizen voter so that when they go to the polls, they can think about, I'm not just voting for somebody's name who I recognize. I'm voting because this person is going to affect me, or decisions that they make are going to affect, fill in the blank.
Well, I think my experience on Commonwealth Court tells me, and both in our trial court jurisdiction and our appellate court jurisdiction, the Supreme Court can issue opinions that affect how we educate our children, how we care for our elderly, how we protect our historic and natural resources, how we elect our public officials. So some of these cases that the Supreme Court has issued, particularly over the last 10 or 11 years, have gone to that impact. A lot of the cases that the Common Pleas Court judges issue deal with the parties that are in front of them. The Commonwealth Court deals with cases that impact all Pennsylvanians, whether it's a zoning case in the Southeast or the Southwest. The rulings that we make have an impact on everybody's lives. If you're a taxpayer, if you're an injured worker, if you're a teacher, if you're a nurse, if you're a doctor, if you're a property owner or a small business owner, these decisions have a lasting impact. And the Commonwealth Court's cases go directly to the Supreme Court when they're in our original jurisdiction. And even on the appeals, they take some significant appeals. So from a decisional perspective, most of the Supreme Court decisions have wide-ranging impact. But from a policy perspective too, this is the court where the justices lead by example, and they lead the entire judiciary by example. That's from an ethical standard, from a professional standard inside and outside the courtroom and in the policymaking function. So if people are looking to have confidence in their judiciary in Pennsylvania, the Supreme Court is where they should look first, and they should look for justices that they know they have confidence to come from high ethical standards and high ethical backgrounds that represent all Pennsylvanians in all parts of the state, regardless of walk of life or circumstances. And that's what I think the voters should be looking for in candidates.
Judge Patrick.
Sorry. I believe that it's important for citizens of the Commonwealth to look, obviously, to our judges for guidance. And of course, it starts always at the Common Pleas Court level. In order for a case to even become on the appellate level, it had to have its original start in our Common Pleas level. And on the Common Pleas level is where us Common Pleas Court judges, which I call judges that are in the trenches, will receive all types of cases, and all types of cases in which I've heard come before the Supreme Court. Our jurisdiction is not limited. So when we're looking for justices on our Supreme Court, of course, we look for justices that will be fair, that will understand the law, that will apply the law, and the impact that I think judges as a whole have on the lives of citizens is very, very important. For example, a judge has greater authority in your life than the president, than even the mayor or even the governor, because all of us at some point in time have had to come to court either for custody, divorce, support, maybe even you have a loved one that's in the criminal system, or maybe you've just been sued. And so it's important that we elect judges who understand what our rights are and who's interested in preserving our rule of law. Thank you.
Judge McCullough.
Thank you. What doesn't it impact? In the last year alone, we've seen almost every single right known to mankind drastically impacted, every single right. And the impact was felt primarily by the courts, the higher courts, the Supreme Court of the United States, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. One of the things that, besides the topics that go there, that affect all of the people, taxes, churches, schools, property, right to know law, redistricting, elections, people want justice. And they want fair trials. They want fair and equal access to the court. And they want to make sure that this is the same across all the courts of common pleas and all of the appellate courts in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And I think it's a great privilege to be able to promote the justice from within the Supreme Court.
And Judge McLaughlin?
I think the voters want empathy and compassion. with any court, and especially starting at our highest court. I think they also want a justice who doesn't just talk the talk, but walks the walk, that's not just around during campaigns, but is out in the community like I am. I not only do education, but I am out there in the community. I never forget when I rule on any matter, whether it was as a trial judge, whether it was as a prosecutor and taking a stance on something, or as an appellate court judge. I never forget that my name on that opinion or that order affects a family's life. And I have the experience, but I also bring that compassion. You know, I was a single mom for many years, and I think that has an impact on who I am, what kind of a judge I am. And so I think the voters want someone like me who brings not only all of the experience in everything everybody has said, because I have experience in every one of those areas of the law, but also that empathy and compassion and the never forgetting where you come from and never forgetting that my signature and my black robe means a lot to a family.
Thank you. I'm noticing some questions in our Q&A, and I just want to make clear that I'm not ignoring these questions, but some of the questions are prohibited, not for me to ask, but for the candidates to answer by virtue of the rules of judicial conduct. For example, asking judges their opinion on a piece of pending legislation, which may ultimately get challenged in court and reach the Supreme Court, would be inappropriate. Asking questions about people's opinions about legislating from the bench in general would probably be out of bounds, although I'll ask something like that. But I just want to remind people at home who are watching that it's not because the candidates don't want to answer, it's because they are precluded by law from answering, and which makes this forum interesting just in its setup, but also the process interesting. So let me ask a question, a short one, maybe 1 minute, a minute and a half for each of you, just to describe your views on not only having to run as a member of a particular political party as opposed to just running, nonpartisan, and also part of that, having your party affiliation listed on the ballot, your county of residence listed on the ballot, or some other kind of locating information on the ballot for the voters to see. How do you feel about that? I guess we'll start with Judge Patrick.
Well, Pennsylvania is a partisan election state. So, regardless of how we may feel about it, the fact is that we're going to have to run based, of course, upon our party, and also based upon our region that is listed under our names for the primary only. Do I think that we should have nonpartisan elections? Well, sure. But at the same time, there are those who believe that judges should also be appointed. So the current state now, we have partisan elections. And I would say as a candidate, I'm fully aware of that. I fully believe in the platform of even my own political party, which is why I'm running. I do believe that that platform is necessary. A conservative platform is necessary going to our Supreme Court. And I hold true to that. I don't shy away from it. And I think it's important that the voters out there, know that as well. So because we are in a partisan state, this is a partisan election, I have no problem with it. I do believe elections are much better than the appointment system, because someone like me has, I believe, a greater chance than perhaps going through merit selection. So thank you.
Judge McCullough.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with Judge Patrick. We are a partisan election state. We all take an oath to be fair and impartial and uphold the rule of law, the Constitution of Pennsylvania and the United States, and we're not supposed to legislate from the bench. But people are allowed to ask us our personal opinions if we add the caveat that we will abide by our oath. So while you know, we would hope that people, after you're on the bench for 12, 13 years, whatever, they realize that you are being fair and impartial. There is a difference in judicial philosophy, and it probably is reflected in the party platforms. Again, the party being more conservative that I run under the moniker of that party. And so it's important to me, I guess, that the people who would share those values understand, you know, that's the platform that we're running from. But would it be nice not to have that there? I guess so, after you've been on the bench for a while. But we still have to abide by the oath.
Judge McLaughlin?
I never thought of myself as fitting into any one mold. So we could talk for this whole entire program about the pros and cons. I think one of the things you asked was about our addresses. And so there are certain security concerns, and I feel for that. I think we've seen what can happen with that when our addresses are made public. So I am concerned about that. I have 2 children. You know, I share 6 adult children. We have grandchildren. So it does matter to me that our addresses are made public. But again, I think that my decisions affect everyone. Everyone should have a right into who they want as a judge. But I've never thought of myself as fitting into any particular mold. I don't want anybody to vote for me for one reason or because I am from one party. I like to think that over the course of my career, everyone knows who I am. I have a record. It's transparent. And so Republicans and Democrats alike voted for me the last election, and I hope it's the same this.
And Judge Brobson?
Well, I don't think I'm in a luxurious position here to debate whether we should have merit selection or elections. Pennsylvania, under the Pennsylvania Constitution, we elect our judges, and the manner with which we elect our judges is partisan elections where you have to affiliate with one party or another. Just so happens I've been a Republican my entire life. I've been a conservative my entire life. And in terms of the counties where we reside underneath where we are in the primary. I can't really attest as to why they do that. But running around the state has its benefits. This is a huge state. I'm originally from a rural county in north central Pennsylvania, Lycoming County. And I'm still raising my family in central Pennsylvania in Dauphin with my wife, Lauren, for 22 years and my 3 kids. We get to travel the state and meet some amazing people and see some places I saw in 2009 that I never thought I'd have a chance to do. And that's great for appellate judges to be able to do that because we're representing everybody. But I bristle as an existing statewide judge when every time I read a newspaper article about a ruling I issued or a ruling my court issued and they're ticking off who was a Republican and who was a Democrat. Because I really do think once we become judges, yes, we ran as Republicans and yes, we ran as Democrats, but the reality of it is we're judges for all of Pennsylvania, and politics have no place in our judiciary. And we need to keep it out of there. And we need to make sure Pennsylvanians have faith that politics is not playing a part in the judiciary.
Thank you. So keeping with our sort of lightning round format, I just saw a question in the questions and answers from Judges Brobson and McCullough, one of your former colleagues, who asks, recognizing that Pennsylvania requires judges to run in partisan elections, what should the voters infer about you from your particular party registration? So Judge Brobson, why don't you start?
You said this came from a former colleague of ours. That's I can narrow that down pretty easily.
I think I referred to him as a him. So
well, him or her, you're right. But it's interesting. So look, I said, it's not no secret. I am a Republican. I'm the endorsed Republican candidate for the Supreme Court race this year. I'm honored to have gone through that process and prevailed in it. But what I think you can infer from that is what bears out in my record as a judge for the last 11 years. I am what they would consider a strict constructionist. I believe in the separation of powers. I believe in judicial restraint. I believe in reading the law as it is written, the provisions of the Constitution as they are written. But I also believe in fairness. I believe in equal justice for everybody. I believe in impartiality. And, you know, I've handled some of the very highest profile cases that the Commonwealth Court has handled over the last 11 years. And not everybody has agreed with me, but I think what I've received in return universally in terms of feedback is from lawyers from all sides have said I was fair. And you know what, when you're a judge, hearing that you're fair is about the best compliment you can receive. So I'm honored to have that. So if people want to infer that I have a judicial philosophy, they're probably accurate to infer that. But I hope at the end of the day, they just realize I just want to be a fair and impartial judge, not a politician, and rule as the law is and as the facts provide.
Thank you. Judge McCullough?
I'm guessing who that was from our court, but I won't say on there. I think this is a question about how we look at the Constitution. I am more of an originalist, a conservative. I think that's obvious by my decisions more than it is by my registration. Remember, when we only get out every 10 years, or if we're running for something, which I love to do because, you know, they said stand for retention, you don't have to go talk to the people, but I did because I felt that I'm accountable to them. I work for them and they have a right to know what I'm doing and that I need to hear from them. So I think look at our cases more than our registration, but the registration does reflect being a conservative on the issues, but I am still fair and impartial and uphold the rule of law and the constitutions in every case that comes before me. I work very hard and very emotionally to do that.
Thank you. Judge McLaughlin?
So I am a Democrat because my father always told me that the Democrats put food on our table. So at a young age, that's what I knew. And that's how I grew up, with democratic values. I look at myself, if they want to see what to infer, you can infer that Judge McLaughlin comes from a family of hardworking immigrants. Judge McLaughlin was the first one in her family to attend college. And if it wasn't for 3 part-time jobs and a partial scholarship, Judge McLaughlin wouldn't be able to go to Penn State, a state school. So I am a Democrat because of all those values, the values that my forefathers brought. Look, Alexander Hamilton said, I guess we are the weakest branch of government because we don't have a sword or, you know, pocket. Well, guess what? I agree with that completely. I don't want to legislate from the bench. I want to be a judge. I don't want to be a politician. It just so happens in Pennsylvania, that's how you get there. But infer from me that you have a hard-working judge who knows where she came from, and I can relate to every single one of us at some level. That's what I hope that the voters infer from me.
Thank you. And Judge Patrick?
Well, I hope the voters can infer from me a few things. One, I was formerly a Democrat, born and raised in the South, and as an African-American. It's kind of like being a Democrat is on your birth certificate, you know. It wasn't until 2009 that I decided to do research on the party platforms that I realized that how I was raised, my background, my traditions were very conservative and in line with the Republican Party. So in 2009, I made the bold decision to switch in the middle of my career my party affiliation. And I'm very happy that I did that. And I don't regret it at all. And so I think what voters can infer from that is that, you know, having been on one side, seeing how things go, now, of course, as a strong conservative Republican, understanding really what our laws are and how they impact us, I think voters should take the fact that I really have the most diverse background than anyone here. And the other thing that voters can infer from me is this, as a judge, even when I was elected as a Democrat, I don't believe in that politics, public opinion, or money should have any bearing on a judge's decision. And a judge should not be swayed by any of those things. And so me having served now, this is my 18th year in the Court of Common Pleas, I can tell you that none of those things have affected any of my decisions. And I believe that people are looking for judges that are fair, that are honest, that have integrity, and that will rule according to the law. And I've done that now for 18 years. And I'm looking forward to doing that going to the Supreme Court. Thank you.
Thank you. I know everybody on this panel remembers, obviously, prior statewide judicial elections. This is the first one where a forum like this is being conducted in a forum like this. And one of the questions we had was, in the wake of the coronavirus and the pandemic, how have you and your various courts utilized technology like Zoom, like WebEx, like all the other platforms, not only to increase participation, to get the courts back up and running, as we've seen, but in terms of how has it impacted your views of access to the courts for the public, and whether or not we might see, for example, televised or at least internet televised proceedings continue on even after the proceedings return live. Judge Patrick, since you are currently a trial court judge, with the exception of the Commonwealth Court in its trial court capacity, let's start with you on that question.
Sure. Well, Philadelphia court system is one of the largest court systems, of course, in the nation, and the largest court system in the state. And so the things that we have done to really kind of acclimate to the pandemic is that we do have Zoom hearings. We also do conferences, like, of course, when attorneys need to speak with judges, or judges are trying to get cases settled and resolved, we do it by way of Zoom or conference calls. And yeah, I think the court has been pretty proactive in moving our cases forward. Now, of course, our court system is different from a large part of the state, because our system is so big that it's broken up into different divisions. We have the family division, family court division, we have the juvenile court division, the criminal trial division, the civil trial division, and the orphans court. And each respective division have been doing their own thing as it relates to the pandemic. But I can tell you that cases are being heard in the Philadelphia County Court system. And of course, in the criminal court, there are actually live hearings. We actually started back doing our live trials as relates to the jury trials, even in the civil trial division, which started this month. So I believe that Philadelphia is being very, very proactive to make sure that the impact of the pandemic is not slowing us down. And we're working hard to catch up on all of the backlog. And I can say that the court is doing an excellent job. And really, I think going forward, that Zoom and some of the other technologies that we've set up here at our court is going to be beneficial to our citizens here.
Judge McLaughlin, having appeared in front of the Superior Court electronically and seen how many people tuned in on YouTube or the live stream link to watch, I was actually shocked a couple of times at the number of people. Do you think your court, the Superior Court currently, might continue that into the future?
At some level. It's interesting because I was appointed the liaison between the Superior Court and the Pennsylvania Bar Association and every local bar association for COVID-related issues. So I have been meeting all throughout this past year with judges, with attorneys from all over the Commonwealth, and just to get their ideas. What do they think? What kind of a job are we doing? And so for us, it's been seamless. We never missed a beat. We started off telephonically just for our first hearing, and then we went right to webinar, to Zoom. And so we have not had any issues. And in fact, just like you're saying, we have many lawyers now asking us, maybe we would have a hybrid system where maybe even though we may be back to normal and it may be safe to be in a courtroom, that some lawyers are preferring it. For example, we have big class action suits, like and lawyers are flying in from Las Vegas, from California. And now they're telling us it's saving them money. The other thing that I've noticed myself is during the hearings, I'll look at the chat room and look at the participants. And I can see that now, like, there are actual litigants coming on in a criminal matter that we never had that. If you come into the courtroom and it's just the attorneys that are there, very, very rarely are there actual parties to an action. And now that we're seeing more participation that way. So I think that in the future, there can be some type of hybrid system. We are talking about that now.
Thank you. Judge McCullough, having been in the Commonwealth Court, I know how big some of the courtrooms are in Harrisburg, but oftentimes, like Judge McLaughlin is saying, filled with just the attorneys, not the litigants. And I do, like I said, I do see the litigants at least logging on to watch arguments at all levels of the appellate courts now. Do you think the Commonwealth Court or even the Supreme Court might adopt that in real time, like a live stream?
Well, let me say, in our original jurisdiction, before COVID, I've already had hearings where, say, some of the inmates, they had to come in by video, and we did do that. There are times when they were on death row. So there are times when you need to use it, and it's wonderful to have the technology. Our court hasn't missed a beat. I say our courtrooms look like they're wrapped in saran wrap. We have plexiglass between the judges, in front of the judges, around the podiums for the attorneys, and I think around the witness boxes. So we've been able to proceed, but I know that the common pleas courts, it's difficult because they do have those trial challenges every single day, and juries, and accommodations had to be made. But I hope that we don't implement something, one, that affects the access to the courts, because people should be able to have free access to the courts. And that has not been as accommodating with the changes that we've had to make. But I understand it. I hope that in the future, we can get back to a more free and open court and conduct our things in person. It's much better when you're trying to look at a witness or the attorneys, if you can have everybody in front of you. So ideally, I would like to see us get back to that, but I know there are going to be situations where, and it's wonderful to have the option when we need to make special accommodations. Hopefully, this is temporary.
Judge Robson?
Well, I want to commend my colleagues and President Judge Mary Hannah Leavitt, who preceded me, for doing a tremendous job of, as Judge McCullough mentioned, not really missing a beat. The last time we had in-person appellate oral arguments was February of last year. Ever since then, I think March and April, we didn't have any arguments. Most everything was submitted or pushed off till our May argument session, and that's when we instituted WebEx. No offense to my friends at Zoom, but AOPC tells me that WebEx is a more secure platform, so that's the one that we use as appellate court judges. But I think it's been very helpful. It's allowed us to keep moving forward. I prefer video to telephone because being a former appellate practitioner, there's just something about being able to read the face of the judge and be able to react a little bit to some things that you're seeing, and vice versa. But I think WebEx has been a tremendous platform to help us as we navigate the COVID pandemic and what is hopefully the light at the end of the tunnel and coming out of it. I was the first judge in Pennsylvania to actually have a statewide live streamed evidentiary hearing. And I can tell you that the lawyers did a tremendous job and our technology staff did a tremendous job. Given the circumstances, but I much prefer in-person proceedings. I much prefer in-person arguments. I think it's strange when we went virtual, a lot of appellate practitioners were complaining that this is like the worst thing ever. We need to get back into the courtroom. But to Judge McLaughlin's points, now we're hearing more lawyers saying, this isn't that bad. Our clients are saving some money, and people get to see it on the live stream. So I'm one of those people that says there's something majestic about being in the people's house, being in a courtroom with the lawyers and the judges and the clients. That I value. But I do think the WebEx platform is going to have value going forward. I think eventually we're going to get back to live arguments, but I think that we have used this platform successfully, and there are probably going to be exceptions where it's going to have value and we should deploy it. In terms of live streaming things over the internet versus some other platform, I think everything's going over the internet at some point in time. So I think I see that happening. But one of the other things that we instituted in terms of access to justice when I became president judge was the Commonwealth Court started a Twitter feed. So I'm happy to know the Commonwealth Court is now tweeting and letting folks know when we issue our opinions or when we have proceedings. The judges supported that move, and I applaud them for that. Access to justice is very, very, very important, but I also think being together, being human beings, having that interaction together is helpful to our health and to our health as a nation, to our health as a state, and to the health of our practice, to the profession of law.
Thank you. Let me take a break from some of these political and pandemic type questions. And since we didn't ask everybody to speak a little bit about themselves at the beginning, let me ask, because I've seen a number of questions. One question was submitted already. One question was just asked online, essentially asking which of your personal experiences in your lives do you believe have prepared you both for being a judge and for, you know, one person here being a Supreme Court justice in Pennsylvania? Judge McLaughlin, let's.
So if I had to point to one part of my life that I think, I would say it was the time that I was a single mother, because that brings so much to who I am and who my boys are and what kind of men they became. So, you know, just from when I was a prosecutor, and that was my only job as a lawyer for 19 and a half years, I had to resign from that job to run for judge. And so that was really scary. One of the scariest things I ever had to do, but I thought to myself that, you know, I have to lead by example. If I want to teach my boys anything, then, you know, to go for something in life, they have to learn from me. And so also multitasking. You know, I was a judge on the Court of Common Pleas for 6 years. I was a single mom for all of those 6 years and never once missed a day of work. I never had a decision overturned either during that period of time. And so I'm proud of that. But I think all of that stems from my time as a single mother. I think when you're the sole responsibility of 2 young boys, it's a lot on your shoulders, but it also makes you a warrior. And it makes you be able to think that you can handle anything that life brings at you. And also you bring that to the bench. And so I thought that I was bringing it for all 3 of us. And so I did that. And I'm proud of who I am. And I'm proud of the young men that my boys have become because of that. So I think if I had to point to one thing, it would be that time that I was a single mother.
Thank you. Judge McCullough?
I think that all of the experiences that we have as attorneys and in our practices obviously develop and grow the base for us to then walk into a judicial position. But I think the one thing that affected me the most, that would prepare my heart the most for being a judge who is one who cares, the do justice, love mercy, was when I served in the family court, when I was appointed as a trial court judge by the governor with the unanimous consent of the state Senate in Allegheny County, appointed as a trial judge. I served in the family division, and I did a lot of hearings with juveniles, at-risk youth, families who were struggling, having to send babies and young children to shelters or foster homes, and then hearing PFAs in the afternoon and contempt hearings. And it just gave me an insight into some patterns maybe and that we need to address in the court system. It's not just like, oh, this person did something wrong, now let's condemn the person and get rid of them. I think we've addressed that to some extent with the specialty courts that we have implemented as a state justice system. Obviously, there are some more I would like to see implemented, but it was the most emotionally compelling job I ever had. And I think it is a check in my heart at all times to listen very carefully, look at what's happening. Yes, apply the law and the Constitution, but to be fair and to be one who dispenses true justice.
Thank you. Judge Patrick?
Well, looking back at my life, I would say that my most telling, I think, experience in terms of making me who I am is growing up in rural North Carolina. I grew up in a in a small town. And growing up, my parents, we had several acres of land. And in the front part of the house, we had corn. The side part of the house, we had beans and peas and potatoes and things like that. In the back of the house, we had melons, watermelons, cantaloupe, honeydew. And every day coming from school, we'd have to go out there to the field. We'd have to pick the corn, shuck the corn, the beans, etc. And I can tell you, I learned the value of hard work. My father was a soldier. And one thing my father taught us is that you don't go to college to get a job, you go to create your own job. And so what I did was when I left law school, I didn't work for a judge as most lawyers do. I didn't work for a law firm as most lawyers do out of law school. I came to Philadelphia knowing one person, and I built a very successful practice from the ground up for almost 10 years. And things like that have prepared me to go to the Supreme Court. I understand the nuts and bolts of the practice. And because of my background in terms of how I was raised and how I was reared, I understand how to deal with people. I understand how to work hard. And I understand about being compassionate and being fair and doing that which is just. So pretty much that's what establishes who I am. Just how I was born and raised and the values that I was taught that caused me to be where I am today. Thank you.
Judge Brobson?
Well, I've had a lot of things happen, as we all have in our lives. I think professionally, the thing that has shaped me mostly in my judicial career has been the opportunity to be appointed by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court to the Judicial Conduct Board of Pennsylvania, the constitutional body that's responsible for investigating allegations of judicial misconduct throughout our court system, and if necessary, prosecuting those charges. That really instilled in me the importance of making sure that we have a judiciary that all Pennsylvanians can have confidence in. And I was honored when my colleagues on the board, Democrats and Republicans, lawyers, lay people, and judges selected me to be the chair of that board for a 2-year term. I was honored to do that. And probably the second professional honor was to become president judge. And the thing that those two things do is they humble you and they make you realize that, people are putting their faith in you and you can't let them down. And that's what I don't want to do. I don't want to let my colleagues down. I don't want to let Pennsylvania down. And I realize when I go into that judicial center every day, I'm doing the people's work, and it means so much to me. Personally, probably the most, other than my wife that I've been married to for 22 years and my 3 kids, probably what shaped me the most was when my daughter was diagnosed with cancer. It is an amazing thing when you hear that diagnosis and have to share that with your 7-year-old daughter. But she's doing great now, but the one thing was it did 2 things too. It drew me closer to my faith. But the most important thing it did for me was to realize how blessed I was, because there were so many people that received that diagnosis that were less fortunate, that didn't have the resources that I had. And it really does humble you and make you realize what blessings that you have and how important it is to you to give back, which is why we got into Penn State, involved in the Penn State Dance Marathon, raising money for the 4 Diamonds to conquer pediatric cancer. It just is amazing the good work that people are doing out there. And that really did shape who I am and how important it is for me to serve.
Thank you. And so I see we're down to our last 10 minutes, and I want to try and divide as best we can that time, but reserve the bulk of that time for some questions we've been getting about money and judicial elections generally. But before I get to that, there was a question from a participant that asks, because of record numbers of Gen Z and younger voters in the past election cycle, what would you collectively all want to know, want them, the younger voters, to know about the importance of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, and how do you, in your lives and your careers, work to learn from younger people, younger voters, during the time that you're allowed to be, you're permitted to be out campaigning, but also just from your experiences on a day-to-day basis. Sorry about that. Judge McLaughlin, let's start with you.
Well, I start right in my home with my boys because they are that age. So they have no problem telling me what's good, what's bad with everyday life, with campaigning, and what I should be doing. But also just from being out in the community. I'm involved in youth groups and juvenile justice programs. And so I think we need to listen to these young folks because I always say they're not nearly our future. They're our now. There are young folks in big positions running for office, winning offices. So I think their voice needs to be heard. And, you know, like I said, I like to think I'm this warrior and I am their age because I feel like I have the energy that they do. But then I know when I have to have a young staffer follow me around and put stuff in the chat room just so that I can talk, I know that I need their help. So I am open, and it starts right in my home with my sons. So they tell me. I have grandchildren who even tell me technologically things that are important. But I think they need to be involved in this Supreme Court election. I think more than ever, they know about our Pennsylvania Supreme Court because it has been in the national spotlight. So I think these young folks who maybe didn't know about our elections certainly now have their eye on it.
Judge Patrick?
Well, I have a young son as well, and a young teenage son now, and I learned so many things from him. But at the same time, I also work with inner city youth. I've served as a mentor, helping the youth to transition in certain things, certain areas in their lives. And I think it's very, very important that we have some connection with our young people. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court, whenever they make any laws, it affects all of us. And I think the young people need to know the impact of their decisions. And, you know, what is it that they can say or do to maybe get involved in the process to help vote and things like that. But I can tell you, being a mentor to inner city youth, especially kids that come from marginalized communities, it's not easy. It's not easy. And I think that judges should know that and be aware of that, that unfortunately, the justice system is not fair to everyone. And it doesn't really treat everyone the same. And as judges, I would hope anyone going to the Supreme Court, like myself, you would want that to make sure that everyone is treated equally and everyone has equal access to the system and to the law.
Thank you. Judge Brobson?
Well, when I got elected in 2009, I went into a Facebook coma. So I have been social media free until this most recent campaign. So my now 13-year-old, who was 2 years old in 2009, is very savvy with social media. So he certainly helped me with that process and getting up to speed. Two of the greatest honors of being a dad was registering my daughter, who's 20, to vote, and my 18-year-old son to vote. I hope they vote for me. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. But you know, look, I think part of the thing that we have to start with the youth is encouraging them to vote. I mean, you know, we always often get the question, what does it mean to be a citizen? Well, one of the most important things to be a citizen is to register to vote. That's one of the things that we can do to express our honor for our country, for the men and women who fought and lost their lives for it, for our Constitution, is for them to participate in democracy. And part of the responsibility we have as judges, part of the responsibility we have as candidates, is to reach out to them and encourage them and engage them. And I've done that. And I enjoy that aspect of campaigning, and I enjoy that aspect of being a judge, counseling boys who are trying to get their citizenship in the nation and citizenship in the state, badges for Boy Scouts. It's just an enjoyable time. But this generation is very important. And I think they're awake. I think they see the importance of the Supreme Court. And again, pointing out to the recent decisions, you know, when they, you know, there's some decisions that the Supreme Court issues that, you know, that don't impact everybody. They impact the parties that are in front of them, or for people that might have a particular interest. But when they rule on elections, when they rule on rights in the Constitution, when they rule on education issues, those are the ones that are impacting our families. And if we can trickle that information down to this new generation of active voters and engagement, we're doing our jobs as judges and candidates, and I'm committed to doing that.
Thank you. Judge McCullough?
Thank you. I've worked with several anti-bullying programs in the schools, anti-drug addiction programs. I currently work with a lot of at-risk youth programs. I know this generation has a lot of challenges that have come against them that many of us never had to deal with, no matter how poor we might have been growing up or whatever. But they are the future. And what I would hope they would know is the key role that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has played in the past, and plays now and will play in the future. It was the first Supreme Court. I hope they will read and learn the history of our nation, that this was the birthplace of the one nation under God, that when William Penn founded this, he prayed that it would be a seed of a nation, a holy experiment, that we would do the thing that is truly wise and just. And I hope that the youth, and when you ask me, what do I hope they know? I hope they will come to know the history of this nation, the history of the foundation of law, so that when they vote, they will be able to apply those principles to their decisions. They are the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And I was just reminded that this program goes till 6:30, so I won't have to ask my next questions really fast. So because of that, let's delve into a topic that is political in nature, but I believe that you all can answer from this point of view, and that's the topic of diversity. Each of you within your own chambers, within your courts to a certain extent, and within the administrative office of the Pennsylvania courts has certain ability to try and increase diversity amongst clerks, staffers, members of your staff, members of the court staff. Are there any plans, number one, that you all have to try and help increase diversity in that general area? And then separately, is there a way to make the boards, Judge Brobson, you spoke about the Judicial Conduct Board, but the Supreme Court has the power to appoint any number of board members. If elected, will you each try and, obviously without making any promises, but try and make those boards more diverse and look more like generally the population of the Commonwealth? Judge McCullough, let's start with you.
Oh, I'm already unmuted. Yeah, I don't think that I wouldn't have to say I'm going to do something new to recognize diversity. In my hiring practices and my staffing, I already have that. I've done it and I have it. I try to give everybody an opportunity, whether it be interns or clerks, the judicial secretaries. You come in, a lot of people come in with wonderful qualifications. And so I believe in being fair. What we do with the boards, again, I don't know that that's something we can promise that we'll say to do, but diversity is a hot topic issue right now. Fairness is a hot topic issue. We need to strive to be fair. And that's, what I think we need to focus on is being fair in the boards and the staff. Do they represent the people of the Commonwealth? And I think I'm already doing that. So I would continue trying to be fair.
Thank you. Judge Brobson?
So I think I can make this representation. I believe that every committee of the Supreme Court, including with the appointment authority, the Judicial Conduct Board is not a committee of the Supreme Court. It's an independent body, and as is the Court of Judicial Discipline, but the Pennsylvania Supreme Court appoints half of the members of both of those bodies. So I would think that that as a Supreme Court justice, if I have the opportunity to make an appointment or recommend an appointment to my colleagues, I would want to look at the composition of the committee or the board to see if it does represent the broad reach of Pennsylvania, corner to corner, gender, race, ethnicity, all those things. I mean, I think we're valued when we have those those viewpoints. And I certainly would commit to looking at that, as I have done in my hiring practices in my chambers. I mean, you know, we have a responsibility. I've taken it very seriously to help when it comes to clerks, to building the next generation of lawyers. You know, what I'm looking for as clerks, because we have so few opportunities to have clerks, is for somebody that wants to be that next public service lawyer, that next person that's going to interact with government and work in state government or work in some of these agencies, whether they want to do unemployment compensation or workers' compensation or driver's license suspension appeals or environmental law. I'm looking for that next generation of lawyers. And I've had a great opportunity to hire some fantastic clerks from all walks of life, from all educational background, and hopefully launch them on a path to career, good path and good career. I think that's part of our responsibility as judges to do that. And I look at it as my chamber's family. I take a lot of pride in that. I like to think it represents the diversity that all of Pennsylvania has to offer. And I have a commitment to continue to doing that, because I think that's important for us to do as judges and as justices.
Thank you. Judge Patrick?
Well, I think it's important that our Supreme Court takes the lead on being more diverse in terms of the appointments for the different committees, commissions, and boards and things like that. I think it's necessary. I think that we live in a time where, you know, everyone in our society should certainly be represented in these respective boards and commissions and things like that. The other thing I think is important is that if we're going to talk about diversity, then we need to be serious about making sure that we have qualified applicants to be a part of these different things. And also looking at your own staff. I mean, since I've been a judge since 2003, I've always made sure that my staff was quite diverse, whether it was race, whether it was gender, whether it was religion, whatever, because I do think that our courts are better when we can have everyone involved in the process and not leave other people out. But I do believe that our Supreme Court should be key, should be the lead in making sure that these things are diverse, and even making sure that our courts are diverse. I think a lot of people don't really realize this, but even in Pennsylvania, we have less than even 5% of even our judicial court staff that is representative of our population. And so that's important. And I think that, you know, we should not be silent on diversity in any respect in the 21st century. And yes, I would be committed to making sure that these things are looked at appropriately and qualified, diverse applicants get their fair shake.
Thank you. Judge McLaughlin?
I absolutely promise to ensure more diversity if I'm in a position where I can appoint. I not only promise, it's underrepresented. Minorities are underrepresented, and I can assure you that if I am a justice on our Supreme Court, I promise to make that happen. Not look into it, I will make it happen. You know why I know that? I started it right for my own staff. When I became a Superior Court judge, you know, we get to pick law clerks. I made sure that I had representatives from the LGBTQ community on my senior staff. I didn't have many minorities, quite frankly, applying for jobs as law clerks. So guess what? I held a position open and recruited until I had a Black candidate and a Black person that could be my law clerk, my senior law clerks. It is important to me. Again, as I said, just the same with my sons. I don't just talk the talk, I walk the walk. I 100% promise that I will ensure a diverse, any kind of authority that I have to appoint, but also with my staff, because I made sure of it in the Superior Court. And I'm the same Maria McLaughlin if I'm appointed to, you know, elected to our Supreme Court. It's going to be no different with me.
Thank you. One of the questions we had was, and we can, each candidate can take a minute to answer this from the participants, was what organizations, if any, do the candidates do volunteer work for? And obviously, I'm not talking about any kind of legal pro bono legal work volunteering, but just volunteering in the community. Judge McCullough, let's start with you.
Okay. like I said earlier, I believe in restorative and equal justice. So it's been very important to me to, especially after my experience in the family court, to reach out to the community and try to improve the system of justice. In doing that, I have helped to work with a residential drug treatment center facility that was set up in a county, one of our neighboring counties. Also taught in the jail for 6 years with a program that reduces recidivism from 40 to 60% to 8 to 12% through the internal program of teaching the core skills. It's faith-based, and mentoring and aftercare. And I've continued to work with the aftercare. I've worked with at-risk youth. I've worked with veterans programs to help them deal with their disabilities. Currently working with a program to try to implement statewide, just connecting the human trafficking issue, the modern day form of slavery, as it's called. It's a $32 billion industry. And there have been so many people that have been doing wonderful things, and we have a core group that we've been working with to try to make the connections and tie them and present a proposal maybe for a diversity court on that. There's been a number of other activities that I've worked with, but I've just continued to try to work with things that help to improve the system of justice. To me, that's very important.
Judge McLaughlin.
So my husband serves on the African American Museum in Philadelphia. We're very involved with that museum and that community. The Veterans Multi-Service Center, we have much to do and volunteer with the veterans, not only in Philadelphia, but all over our Commonwealth. I volunteer and do many community service projects with our synagogue, Mikveh Israel in Philadelphia. Also youth groups, women's prisons. We go into women's prisons with judges, a program called Success In and Out. Before COVID hit, I was headed to Zambia. My son was a volunteer in the Peace Corps. And so we were building a basketball court in his village that didn't have any electricity and plumbing. And he had it set up that I was going to teach young girls before COVID hit. So the most important thing, and what my parents taught me, was that it's so much more important to give back. No matter what, we came from humble beginnings. I grew up in a row home. We had nothing, but we had everything compared to so many other people. And so I never forget that. So I could go on, but there are a couple things that are near and dear to my heart.
Thank you. Judge Brobson.
Well, having 3 kids, I was involved in the two that are still in the house for the most part. A lot of the parental activities take up your time. So I've spent a lot of time volunteering for youth sports. My oldest son is an Eagle Scout. He just completed his Eagle Scout project. God bless him, did a 90-person outdoor amphitheater at his school. So I was recently lugging a lot of block, but helping the scouts with their merit badges, overnight camping and things like that, just being able to work with these young boys, some of them from great backgrounds, some of them from not so great backgrounds, but just trying to make themselves better and improve themselves. I enjoy volunteering for that. Near and dear to my heart, of course, is the Four Diamonds at Penn State Hershey. This organization, this entity that raises money annually to help conquer pediatric cancer, working with starting a mini-thon at my kids' high school or my kids' grade school, where they're raising millions and millions of dollars to help conquer pediatric cancer and support these families with healthcare, so they don't even have to think about a bill. They don't have to worry about paying for their treatment. All they have to do is worry about taking care of their kids and taking care of their family. And of course, the Penn State students do a tremendous job raising money every year. So it's been my absolute honor to be involved in that and those organizations, and certainly being involved with outreach organizations for my church, my faith, and those organizations is very important to me and my family. And yeah, as judges, the thing is, some people will tell you that judges are supposed to be cloistered and enter into a tower and not be seen when they get elected. I completely disagree with that, and it's great. I know Judge Patrick's going to also talk about her tremendous service. It's great to be on a panel with judges who really view that as important, that getting elected judge doesn't mean we're supposed to go away. We're supposed to be in our communities. And I promise the people of Pennsylvania that when I become a justice, nothing's going to be different. We're going to get out there. We should be out there meeting the people and helping and volunteering. And that's my pledge.
Thank you. And Judge Patrick?
Well, yes, since I was elected in 2003, I've always been very active in the community. Me going to the bench did not stop or hinder that. In fact, I think I got more involved in the community because I had a bit more time after work. And so I'm active in the Women of Transformation in ministry that I've gotten involved with to help women that are transitioning from society. I've been active in helping with reentry. Helping Tracy Fisher and some other ones with their reentry programs. The other thing that I've done is that here in Philadelphia, we have, a lot of you may know about Kensington and the heavy drug area. I go there with different groups helping with homelessness and things of that sort. And also in 2017, I started a women's ministry called Women of Flame. And what we do is that we help minister to the needs of women and to really build women as opposed to building buildings. We believe in building people. And that's what we do. And I will continue to do that going to the Supreme Court. I think it's important that if you are a true leader, then you are a true servant.
Thank you. Let me ask one quick question for everybody. Take a minute if you can. This comes also from the audience, and I think it's actually a very insightful question, which is, how would each of you explain what it means to be conservative judicially or liberal judicially to a non-lawyer voter, to, just a voter who knows that they vote for their judges, but really they see your party affiliation. But, look, there are Democrats who identify as judicial conservatives. There are Republicans who identify on issues as liberal thinkers, liberal in a judicial sense. So how best could you describe that to a non-lawyer? Judge Patrick?
Well, to a non-lawyer, what I would say in terms of my judicial philosophy is that I will not seek to rule based upon how I feel or how or what I think it should be. That I would rule based upon what the law is, what the law says. I would rule being guided by our Constitution and not being guided by public opinion, not being guided by social media or anything else, but being guided by what the law actually says. In a nutshell, explaining it to a layperson, that's my conversation that I would have with them, to make them understand that we need judges that are able to decide that way, as opposed to looking at everything else to try to make a decision when the law is right there for us, and we should obey and follow precedents.
Judge McLaughlin?
I would say to the non-lawyer that when it comes to Judge McLaughlin, you don't have to worry about that, because I don't identify myself as liberal or conservative. I am a Democrat. That's the ticket I run on, but that doesn't mean anything except for the party I belong to. You could think whatever it is that you want, but I would tell the non-lawyer to look at who I am. Look at who we are. Look at our qualifications and look at our life experiences and look at our record, our judicial record. And so, I don't rule on ideology. I rule at the facts that come before me. We don't go out and seek our cases. They come to us. And so I would say, don't worry about that if you're looking at me, because I don't fit into any mold.
Thank you. Judge McCullough?
It goes along with the oath that we take. A judge is to be fair and impartial, uphold the rule of law and the Constitution of Pennsylvania and the United States. I think the people do want to know, how we view the Constitution. And when I took the oath to uphold the Constitution, I meant the Constitution as it reads, not to legislate from the bench, not to look at it like it's a squishy, changing, morphic thing that can mean anything that we want it to mean. There's generations of precedent as to what the Constitution, the Pennsylvania Constitution and the US Constitution mean. And that's what I think, when someone is asking what does being a conservative or liberal or whatever. It's our judicial philosophy of how we uphold the rule of law and the Constitution as it stands.
Thank you. And Judge Robson?
You know, I've never been a fan of labels when it comes to judges. I know, you know, in other political circles, people talk about conservatives and liberals. In judicial speak, it's usually, are you a strict constructionist or a judicial activist? That seems to be the buzzwords that are used. I'm not about to try to attempt to ascribe what to answer your question, David, directly. How would I explain what is a conservative versus a liberal? I'm not sure I'm able to do that as a judge. A politician may be able to do that, but I'm not sure a judge can. But I do think there is a difference between judges that have a view of that are slow to disturb precedent, that are slow and reserved and restrained in paving new interpretations or creating new rights or disturbing what the General Assembly has done. There are judges that believe in judicial restraint and believe in precedent and believe that you know, we have three branches of government, and you shouldn't go to one branch when you should be going to the other. Everybody should be staying in their lane. And so I think that's what I view. And when I say that I'm a conservative judge, that's what I mean is I believe in judicial restraint. I believe in the separation of powers. I believe we should be slow to disturb precedent. I believe that that we should not use our power as judges to alter the law simply because we don't like it, or simply because the media of the day, or the social media day, or the pressure of the day, or the politics of the day are suggesting that we should, or the circumstances of the day are suggesting we should. I encourage people, when I talk to them, to seek their relief in the appropriate form, whether that's the executive branch, the legislative branch, or the judiciary branch. But my job as a judge is not to save Pennsylvania from silly laws that the legislature enacts. My job is to save them from unconstitutional ones. And that's really where I view myself as a conservative, keeping within my lane. And that's very important to me, but I'm not going to venture to try and define what a liberal or a judicial activist is.
Thank you. That's probably best. Now that we really only have 12 minutes left, let me ask some questions about money and judicial politics. A lot was written after the 2015 cycle that about the amount of money that was spent for the Supreme Court election, both that were contributed to the candidates and that were used on behalf of the candidates by outside groups. So one of the questions we had was, have any of you in running for Supreme Court this time made any self-imposed restrictions on from whom you'll take money, the amount of money, things of that nature? I recognize that, you know, what the rules prescribe. So I'm only asking generally, have you generally given yourself any self-imposed restrictions in terms of direct contributions? Judge McCullough?
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, when I ran in 2009, I made a pledge not to take money from attorneys or PACs. And I didn't. I didn't want the people to think there would ever be any reason why I would be compromised, aside from the fact that we can always recuse when a judge feels that there is an appearance of conflict or impropriety. But I did the same thing when I ran in the general election in 2009. I did the same thing in 2019 when I stood for retention, and I'm doing the same thing now. It's very important to me that the people know that I'm willing to do that, and, you know, because I think they deserve it. It's possible to win that way. I did it, you know, by the grace of God, I did it, and the support of the people. So I'd like to see us make other changes but I can only speak for myself, and I'm making the same pledge now not to take money from attorneys or PACs, because those are the ones who usually give the most amount of money and appear in the courts. So, and I believe that means something to the people. So I've done that again.
Thank you. Judge Patrick?
Well, let's be honest. Judicial elections are very expensive. I think that the last judicial election that we had for the Supreme Court, there was something in the tune of $10 million that was raised and so forth. So it takes a lot of money. But at the same time, as a judge, as a jurist, you have an obligation pursuant to our canons, where of course, you know, you can't be swayed by any money that comes into your campaign. I've been elected in 2003. I was reelected in 2013. And I can tell you, I've taken money from different PACs, but they have never bought me at all. If they come before me, I would disclose that on the record. So giving money does not, as far as I'm concerned, for me, translates into buying my vote. And you ask, are there certain PACs that you would not accept money from? Absolutely. I stand firm as a pro-life candidate, and I would never take money from Planned Parenthood. And I can say that confidently. But, you know, I would say that any PAC that's not in line with my views, what I think is important, even to those who support me, I would not take the money. But judicial elections are expensive. And there's nothing wrong with taking money, of course, from attorneys and so forth. That's why we have the campaign finance laws. Things have to be reported. Everything has to be done appropriately. And I believe as a judge, especially if you have been a judge for a period of time, you have experience in knowing the things that are appropriate and not appropriate. And if people come before you expecting favors, then you already know that those people should not even be in front of you. So yes, I believe in raising money, and guess what? We're going to raise a lot of money. I'll tell you that. Thank you.
Judge McLaughlin?
Well, I got to be honest, I have anxiety hearing all the money that's being raised because I don't come from money. I do come from the Democratic Party of working people, not millionaires. So I do worry about that. I worry about it every single day because it does cost money to run. It costs money to run because our state is huge. I mean, when I ran for Superior Court, just the bulk of the money was one little commercial, 30 seconds that went on half the state, not even the larger part of the state where I come from. So I do know that it costs money. I think it's important to follow the judicial rules, the campaign finance report. I wish we didn't have to run with money. I'm telling you, if you told me everybody could only raise X amount of dollars, I would love that because I know what I could do with X amount of dollars. I know what it takes to stretch a dollar. When I was making $24,000 and I had 2 kids. So I know what it's like. But yeah, I honestly, I am getting anxiety over hearing the amount of money that's being raised, not on my side. So yeah, I wish it were differently, but yeah, we do have to raise money. We just have to make sure that we, you know, follow the law and follow the judicial rules, which I will always do.
Thank you. Judge Brobson?
Yeah, this is a topic that I'm also kind of sensitive to because when I was on the Judicial Conduct Board after the 2015 election, we looked very closely at this and we passed a statement of policy because there were some people that felt that there should be a hard dollar limit. In fact, I think there was some debate within the Supreme Court when they modified the rules, whether there should be a hard dollar limit or a percentage of the total you raise. You know, it's difficult. So the canon basically says from a disqualification perspective that you need to apply a subjective test, which I've not yet met a judge who can't find that they can pass the subjective test. You know, can I be fair even though this person gave me thousands of dollars? Well, of course I can. But the most important part of the test is the objective test. And that's the objective test is what would the public believe if they saw that lawyer in front of you or that party in front of you and knowing that the amount of money they gave your campaign could possibly influence the outcome of the case. So it's very important that judges not shield themselves from the amount of money that's being raised when their campaign committees are raising them. I've heard judges say, I don't want to know. Well, you have to know. You can't be blind to it. You can't put your head in the sand. You have to know where your money is coming from because especially sitting judges, we need to know who's giving to our campaign, because we need to know if we need to disclose or we need to recuse. So look, I think money is part of this. I think the idea that you can run statewide for Supreme Court and not educate the voters about everything about yourself without money is frankly a little bit naive, because the voters deserve to know our records. And it's not something that they're going to run in every newspaper, if people even read newspapers anymore. It's something that we have an obligation as the candidates to get out there. And the only way we can get our records out and get you to know who we are is through financial resources. So it's part of the beast. I really do wish it wasn't. I'm in the Maria McLaughlin camp on this. I wish it wasn't part of the process, but it is. And I think in terms of limits, have I set? My campaign committee knows my heart. They know where my lines are. There are certainly organizations that I would never want money from, organizations that preach hate, or organizations that are intolerant. Any organization that would attempt to give me money like that, my campaign committee is aware that they should not be soliciting that kind of money. Hard caps, I don't know. I've never seen a contribution come to me yet that made me scratch my head and go, wow. But maybe that'll happen, and we'll have to look at that. But look, I mean, we're trying to do the best we can under the system that the Constitution has given us. We have an obligation to educate our voters. We can't just put our name on a ballot and just hope that we get pulled. And that's kind of our obligation, and money, and it takes money, and we're going to do it in an ethical way. Like I said, I'm very familiar with the canons. I'm very familiar with the JCB statement of policy, and I plan to adhere to it. Whether it's a disclosure to a party or an outright recusal. And I will be aware. I will monitor what happens with my committee in terms of their fundraising activities, because that's my responsibility as a sitting judge too.
Thank you. And let me ask this question. I guess it'll have to be our final question, because it's been asked in various forms from the participants. What Supreme Court justice, living or dead, has inspired you in some way, either to become a lawyer or become a judge or want to run for judicial office? Judge Patrick?
Well, the Supreme Court justice that actually inspired me to even want to be a lawyer and pursue the system of justice was, of course, Thurgood Marshall. I admired his career and how he was able to come through the ranks and do the things that he was able to do. But in terms of my judicial philosophy and what I actually believe, Clarence Thomas is the other person that I would hold true to. There were two African-American jurists that were on our Supreme Court. Clarence Thomas still there, but I'd say Thurgood Marshall, in terms of just his background and experience in terms of being a lawyer, he inspired me to do that. But I would say Clarence Thomas, no doubt, in terms of his philosophy.
Thank you, Judge Brobson.
Are you asking for United States Supreme Court or Pennsylvania Supreme Court?
United States Supreme Court.
Just wanted to make sure. Probably the justice that I most admired, and I actually had an opportunity to meet him before he passed, was Justice Scalia. And it's not just because I think we share a similar philosophy, but I admire him for two reasons. One, he had a wicked pen. He could write a great concurring opinion or dissenting opinion, and just be very clear and very straightforward. And I strive to do that in my writing. I try to write opinions so people understand. They may not agree with me, and I don't promise people that they're going to agree with me, but what I try to promise them is, in my opinions, they're at least going to know why I reached the decision I reached. A lot of frustration people are feeling in Pennsylvania right now is because they just don't understand why. And I think as judges, it's not just our responsibility to decide cases, but to explain the why. And I think Scalia just had an excellent way of explaining the why of every one of his positions. Probably the other thing I most admired about him was his relationship with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, because to me, collegiality on the court is critical. Getting along with your colleagues, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, it doesn't really matter, but we have to work together. And our court is very collegial. We have a history of that, a tradition of that, and it's something that I really value about the Commonwealth Court, and something I would hope to bring, if successful in this race, to my colleagues on the Supreme Court, is that idea of collegiality. It's very important. It's why I think I ultimately was elected president, judged by my colleagues, Democrats and Republicans alike. It's why I think I was elected to serve as the chair of the Judicial Conduct Board by lawyers, lay peoples, Democrats, Republicans alike. Collegiality is the secret sauce to the judiciary. And that's really what I valued about Justice Scalia and Ruth Bader Ginsburg's decision. Couldn't be farther apart in terms of how you approach it to see cases, but they were friends. They went to the opera together, and that collegiality is priceless.
Thank you. Judge McLaughlin?
So there was never a justice that inspired me to become a judge, because in my wildest dreams, I never imagined I'd be a judge. Graduating from college in my house was the big deal. So no justice ever inspired me. If I have to look to a justice who I admire the most, it's Ruth Bader Ginsburg for many reasons. Her guts, her tenacity. She's a trailblazer, and she broke glass ceilings for women and minorities, all things that I am so proud of. So if I have to say one justice that I admire the most, it's her.
Thank you. And Judge McCullough?
Well, I would say first, Justice Harlan, because he was the only one who dissented in that Plessy-Ferguson case, which was horrible. Separate but equal. Modern day, I would look at Justice Scalia and Justice Thomas. Justice Scalia, having heard him speak, I just thought he was very smart, very entertaining, but he was always striving to follow the Constitution. And Justice Thomas, because his opinions are always very straightforward. He precedent, the history of the nation, and I just think he's very true and consistent to his judicial philosophy. And so I think the three of them I admire very much.
Thank you. I want to thank all the candidates and Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts, and I'll turn it back to Deborah.
Okay, so I just want to, I know we've gone a little over, but I want to thank everybody for participating in this forum and helping to educate the voters of Pennsylvania about you and the courts. Thank you to the Philadelphia Free Library and the co-sponsors of this program. This was a wonderful evening, and have a good night. And thank you all.